Okay, we're ready next to talk about number 3 on your list there, called Interpersonal Attraction. As it says there, we're going to talk about factors that contribute to why we like some people and not others. So you see, we're going to talk about 3 main factors here. So go ahead and list them right now, but then we're going to go into detail in each of these. So proximity. Proximity, we're going to talk about frequency of exposure and availability, but what proximity really means is how physically close we are to a person tends to determine how much we end up liking that person. So again, proximity. Physical closeness to a person can influence how much we end up liking that person. And second is rewardiness. Now, in general, of course, the word tends to mean, it's kind of a funny word because it's not a real word in dictionary, but basically it means that we tend to like people who do nice things for us, say nice things to us, and look nice. So I'm going to talk about that. And then the third area is similarity. And we're going to find that, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, opposites do not attract. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, interpersonal attraction. Why do you like some people? Think about it, the people that you like at this moment, right? What is there about them that you like? And how did you get put together with this person in the first place, right? Maybe think about some of the people that you don't like very well. If you're sitting near that person, don't look at him right now. But think about, what is it about this thing called interpersonal attraction that psychology can give us some insight about? So, let's talk first about this thing called proximity. So what is it? Proximity means physical closeness. The research finds that in general, now all this is going to be generalizations. So as we go through it, in some cases you might go, well, that's not true, or that didn't happen. So just kind of bear with me as we take a look at kind of the big picture here. So proximity. That is, we tend to like people that we are physically close to. What happens is, think about some of the friends that you have now in your life. Well, how did you get to know those friends? You got thrown together with them in some way. Maybe it was a friend of a friend, maybe it was at school, at work, on a team, some situation, church, some situation where you got thrown together with a person and you got to know that person, right? So proximity. Now, there's a couple facets of proximity that will help us make some sense out of this. So one facet or one factor in proximity that I want you to get down is called frequency of exposure. So what does that mean? That means, in general, the more often we see someone, the more likely we are to like that person. Doesn't guarantee that we'll like that person, but it increases the likelihood that we'll like that person. You know, you think about whenever I lecture on this during, election years. You know, what do you see? You see signs everywhere, right? They want you to, get comfortable with seeing the last name of this person so that you'll vote for them. You see them on TV. You see all kinds of ads. You see all kinds of ways that these people are trying to make themselves, so that when you see them, that you recognize who they are. So when you first meet somebody, you have no place in your brain for what they look like. I mean, think even in your own classroom when you first, got there the first few days and couple weeks or whatever, you really didn't notice these people. But as time went on, you began to see them more and more. And so theoretically, the more often you see someone, the more likely you are to like them. Now again, it's not a guarantee, okay? But there's a place now in your brain for this person let's say 5 years from now, you're walking down the street somewhere, or maybe you're at some game or Costco or a club or whatever, and you look up and you see this person and you go, hey, hey you look familiar. Where did I know you from? And they're going, I don't know, where what? And then they go, wait a minute, wasn't it that, yeah, it was that human relations class way back in, oh geez, a long time ago. Look at us now, it's 5 years later, we're old, right? And so what happened is that you had a place in your brain for this person because you'd seen them enough times where the frequency of exposure influenced your relationship to them. Okay? So, in your book it's called the mere exposure effect, meaning just the more often we see someone, the more likely we are to like them. Think of it just ads in general, right? Think of all of the ads that you see all the time. Cars, insurance, toilet paper, on and on, foods, on and on, all these ways that they expose it to you again and again and again, hoping that you're going to get used to it, right? So that's frequency of exposure. The more often we see someone, the more likely we are to like them. Again, not a guarantee. A second facet and a second factor that I want you to get that relates to proximity is something called availability. That is, we tend to like people that we perceive as available. That is easy to get to. And again, you think of your friends, right? Your friends are probably people that you got thrown together with, that you were available. They did some interesting research, for example, on high school friends many years ago. What they found was something fascinating, that high school friends tended to have their last names beginning with the same first letter. Now, why would that be the case? Think about that for a moment. Why would these friends tend to have last name of the same first letter? What they found was that, of course, years ago, kids were put alphabetically in school. And I think back at my high school. My best friend in high school was a guy named Charles Barton. B-A-R-T-O-N. Where was I? B-A-U-G-H-E-R. Right? In other words, I would arrive first day in some classroom and I'd look and there he is sitting right in front of me, right? And then a couple classes later, here he is in another class of mine, sitting right in front of me. So he and I became best friends. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. Why? Because he was available, right? He was like right there. And so, let's say here I am, this is the first day of class, and I walk in the classroom, I look around, I sit down, and I look over and I see someone next to me, and then I see someone way on the other side of me, on the other side of this person. And so I decide to kind of push this person aside and go, hi, what's your name, right? Now, what just happened is that I tried to jump over this person and, connect with someone else. Well, guess what? It's easier to connect with the person right next to me, or in front of me, or in back of me. That's all availability. And what do we find? Those are the people that we're most likely to know. Think about the classroom that you've been in the past. Who did you more likely get to know? Didn't necessarily like them, but the people who then were proximal to you, right? Physically available. Now, what we find is that if you want to make friends, what's the factor? Find a way to make yourself available, Don't go and sit in the corner at a party. Put yourself in a situation where you are right there at a party, right? For some people, it's like, well, if they're going to come and talk to me. It's like, no, you want to be involved in such situation, put yourself right there so you are available. So, here's a good example of availability. Years ago, I was a student at Highline, and I was driving down the street, and I saw this girl that I knew, Donna. She was walking with this other girl. I was on my way to work. And so I pull over, hi, Donna. And Donna says, oh, hi. Hey, this is my friend Chris from California. I go, oh, hi, Chris. So where are you going? Oh, we're going to the mailbox. So I give him the ride to the mailbox. The next day, Donna calls me. Says, hey, how'd you like to go out on a double date? You can take out my friend Chris, and we'll go with, you can go with my boyfriend and me. I go, sure, okay. So that night, I ended up, taking this girl from California out named Chris. And so we talked, it was nice. So then I mentioned that the next day I'm, going to be working at the grocery store. And so here I am in the grocery store, and my cashier, and I look up, and what a coincidence. Donna and Chris just happen to be coming through my line, buying some things. And I happen to mention that I'm getting off at 6:30 that night. So now comes 6:30, and I get in my car, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, it'd be nice to see Chris again, but I don't know. Can't just walk up to her house, right? It's too scary. But I knew I'd be driving right by her grandmother's house where she was staying. And as I came up the little hill and I got near her grandmother's house, I looked up, and here I was. What a coincidence. 6:30? She just happened to be sitting out on the steps. So I pull over. We talked. It took me about 20 minutes to get up the guts, and I asked her for another date. Chris is my wife. Yep. What did she do? She used the concept of availability to make herself available. She knew I was not the kind of guy that was going to drive up, pull my car over, walk up the stairs, knock on her grandmother door, hey baby, I'm here, Because that thing, as some of you guys know, strikes terror in the hearts of young men. So no, I was not about to do that, but she made herself available. And yes, once in a while she'll look at me and go, yeah buddy, but if I weren't sitting out on those steps, I go, I know. So who knows? Make yourself available. You might get married. How many of you have ever asked someone to dance? A stranger to dance, right? Kind of scary, right? How many of you have ever been asked to dance? So what do we know? We know that if you want to increase the likelihood that you are going to be asked to dance, you find a way to what? To make yourself available. So, let's say here's a heterosexual situation at a club. Some gal sitting here. They're talking. They look up and see like 3 guys walk through the door. One of them goes, hey, look at that one over there. That guy's cute. The other guy goes, what are you going to do? So what does she do? She gets up. She walks over. She leans against the wall. And she's just pretending that she's texting or, looking at her phone or whatever. And she's right near where these guys just came in. So as the guys come in, they're looking around going, so what do you think, man? You want to ask someone to dance? Yeah, I guess. And he looks over and goes, oh, here's someone here. Hey, would you like to dance? And he thinks he found her, right? She nailed him the moment he walked through the door. What did she do? Availability, right? Little kids who make good friends know how to make themselves available. What do? They're out on the playground. They see some kid playing with the ball. Hey, throw the ball to me. Or, hey, where'd you get that jacket? Or, where'd you get that? Where'd you get those shoes? And what do? They find a way to make themselves available. So what do we got? We got proximity. The best way to increase the likelihood of becoming attracted to someone is to find a way to do the mere exposure effect and make yourself available. When we go to apartments, for example, what do we know? We know that availability is a factor. We knock on this guy's door up here and say, if you were to choose someone as your friend in this apartment, who would it more likely be? as probably more likely as neighbors, unless they have thin walls and then they can't get along with each other. But what do we find? There might be a nice person, 5 doors away, but they're never going to get to know each other. Or how many of you have ever lived on a street where you didn't know people who were like 6 houses down? But how many of you have ever lived in a cul-de-sac where, you got this circular area where the people congregated and got to know each other? What did you find? Availability, right? People were able to see each other. So that's the first factor. Let's take a look at the second one, called rewardiness. Now, don't get fooled by just saying rewardiness means that we tend to like people who make us, who are rewarding, right? It's more than that. So let's take a look at 3 factors that contribute to this thing called rewardiness. The first one, factor in rewardiness, is that we tend to like people that we consider to be nice looking, that we consider to be pretty, handsome, gorgeous, delicious, whatever term is appropriate to you. Just think that's a factor that influences interpersonal attraction. Now, what's interesting is we tend to like people that we perceive as nice looking, but not too nice looking. If they're much more nice looking than what we perceive ourselves, think of the bell-shaped curve of nice looking, right? And so they're people who maybe sort of consider themselves mid-level nice looking, but if they meet someone way up here who's high-level nice looking, they may not be as attracted because, they're way out of my league and they wouldn't be interested in me, kind of thing, right? But we tend to like people that we consider, and of course, that's the beauty of human behavior, is that each of us has our own idea about what it means to be good looking. All right, so one, rewardiness is we tend to like people that we consider to be nice looking. Second, we tend to like people who say nice things to us, right? Who say things like, "Oh, you're a nice person," or "I like you," or, "I like this about you," or whatever, right? Or, "You're such a nice person." Any of those things that, we can consider, that's nice. We tend to like people who say nice things about us. Unless we perceive that there's something called a something motive. So what's that term? It's a term called ulterior motive, right? That is, we like people who say nice things about us, unless they think what? That they want something from us, right? Years ago, my wife and I had a friend who was a single woman, and she wanted to go to shop for a car. So we went to this sales place, and we were in the storeroom, and here she is. She gets in this nice car. Sales guy comes up to her. She's sitting in the car, and he says to her, "You look so good sitting in that car." Now, was she immediately attracted to this guy? Heck no. What does he want? Of course, he wants her money. So, guess what? Yes, we do like people who say nice things, but if they have some ulterior motive, maybe here you are walking down the street, someone looks up at you and says, "Hey, baby, you're looking good," right? Now, females have had to put up with this forever. But now, once in a while, males are starting to get this, right? He's walking down the street and someone says, "Hey, baby, you look great." Now he has to deal with, does she really want me, or is there something else that she wants, right? So, we tend to like people who say nice things to us, except for that ulterior motive. Third factor in rewardiness is we tend to like people who do nice things for us, right? They do a little favor here, they get us something here, maybe they buy us something here. It's like, well, that's nice. Except not too many things. How many of you ever had someone, do something for you, and then do something again, and then something else, and pretty soon it's like, wait a minute, wait, there's too much going on here, So, years ago, back in the 1970s, the most popular new class in college was something called Women's Studies. where they would take a look at the history of how women were treated as second-class citizens and the struggles that women have gone through and so on. But then in the 1980s, the new popular class was called Men's Studies. Now, who signed up for a Men's Studies class? Well, of course, women, right? Wanted to know more about men. And so in the 1980s, I met quite a few sociology instructors, and many of them would tell me about this class, and they would give the similar assignment, which I thought was an interesting one. It would go something like this. And about halfway through the quarter, your job was to go out on a reverse standard heterosexual date. So what am I talking about? Going out on a date in which now the woman does everything that the man would traditionally do. And so the whole idea is that the woman would call up, she would make the date, she would drive, she would pick him up, open the door, go through the whole thing. And, for some men, when they first heard about this, it was like, that's pretty cool, I want to be picked up and kind of wined and dined, right? So a couple weeks later, they reported back, how was that? And for some people, some guys, it was like, that was a nice time. It was just someone taking care of me and making sure everything was okay. But for the majority of men, it was like, no. She drives up, she opens the door, I get in the car, make sure the seatbelt's on, shuts the door, drive to the restaurant, open the door again, get to the restaurant, pulls the chair out, she orders for me. Some cases, she pays, she kind of takes over the conversation and the whole bit. And so for some of these guys, they're like, so on the way home, I'm sitting in the passenger seat wondering, now what does she want from me? And the women are like, join the club, right? You finally got a feeling for what it means for someone to do something and do something and do something. Then they come collecting, right? I'm here to collect. So what's the point here? The point is, yes, we tend to like people who do nice things for us, but not too many many nice things. So let's summarize. What do we got? We got rewardingness. That is, we tend to like people who make us feel good in the following ways. 1, we tend to like people that are nice looking, but not too nice looking. 2, we tend to like people who say nice things to us, unless there's an ulterior motive. And 3, we tend to like people who do nice things for us, but not too many nice things. All right, let's take a look next at the third factor, similarity. Okay, similarity. Now, contrary to popular belief, in fact, contrary to what someone named Paula Abdul said a long time ago. How many of you know who Paula Abdul is? If you don't know her, she's a singer, and she's been on TV over the years. But she sang a song, almost 20 years ago now, called Opposites Attract. Now, what I want you to get here is, contrary to everything that you've ever heard, opposites do not attract. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, oh yes, I know this couple and they're totally opposite. Just bear with me here. We're going to go through it. Find what is clear is that the research in psychology shows that opposites do not attract. Similarities attract. So, Paul Abdul comes out with his song, Opposites Attract. It's a natural fact. Now, this ticked off a lot of us psychologists. So one day, I called Paula. No, I wanted to. And say, Paula, what in the heck are you doing? Going against everything that we know in psychology about interpersonal attraction. But a couple years after this song came out, Paula got married. And then, a couple years after that, she got a divorce. Now, divorce is a public piece of information. And so if you look up the reasons that Paula Abdul gave for being divorced, I think you'll find this quite interesting. I'll give you the first word and you give me the second one. That the reason that the woman who sang the song Opposites Attract got divorced is because of irreconcilable what? Yes, differences. Now, I don't relish anyone's relationship breaking up, but I thought it was quite interesting that the very person who talked about opposites then got a divorce because they could not handle being opposite, right? So, let's take a look then at why similarity is so important. In fact, what I want you to get down is that similarity is the most important factor in interpersonal attraction. Yes, opposites may initially attract, but they do not stay together. It's similarity that will keep people together in the following areas that we're going to talk about. So, of all three factors, proximity, rewardingness, and similarity, the most important factor is similarity. So let's take a look at why. First, a way to understand similarity is understand it in terms of four different factors. I call it a little acronym called BIVA, B-I-V-A. And so the B in interpersonal attraction is beliefs. That what we find is that the more similar people are in beliefs, the more likely they will stay together. Now, can people of two different religions make it? Yes. If, for example, they're going to get married and they decide that if they're going to get married in a particular church, some religions will not allow you to get married in their church unless your spouse then converts to your religion. I mean, I've heard of that before, right? Or let's say two people decide to get married and there are two different religions, then the question becomes, how are we going to bring up the children? And in that area, they have to be similar, right? They have to decide we're going to bring them up in your religion or our religion, your religion, or maybe, it's going to be a combination of both religions, but they have to agree on that, and that's similarity. But for the most part, people of different religions getting together, having a relationship is a challenge. Not impossible, but a challenge. So beliefs. Another one is political beliefs, right? Think of when you talk to a friend of yours who has a very different political belief. What do they think about our president? And you say, I think the president is doing a lousy job. And the other person goes, I love our president. You go, well, you're an idiot because they're our president, right? Okay. Or our governor or senator, politics, right? Where are you in terms of, conservatism, and where are you in conservative with the liberalism side of it? So what we find is that it's important that people find a way to find similarities in political. Now, some of you heard before that, especially with friends, it's probably not helpful to talk about religion and politics because those are areas that, people are often very entrenched in, okay? But what other beliefs do you have? For example, what are your beliefs about Obamacare? What are your beliefs about capital punishment? What are your beliefs about, buying a new car? What are your beliefs about gaming, how important that is in your life? What are your beliefs about, in a relationship, is it okay for one partner to cheat on the other one? Okay? If they have opposite beliefs, we got a big problem here, right? So beliefs. What are my important beliefs and how similar am I to this other person? The second area, the I, is interests. That's important that you have similar interests. For example, let's talk about sports, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that people have to like each other's sports, but let's say there's a woman and a man who are both interested in tennis. The woman likes to play tennis all the time. Let's go and play tennis. Let's have a great, And the guy likes to watch it. So the woman goes, hey, so what do you think about tennis today? And he says, great, what channel is that? She goes, no, let's go out and play it. And he goes, why should we play it when we could watch it on here? Djokovic, Serena Williams, I mean, all these people that we can watch. Now we got, a little bit to similarity in that area of interest. Or what hobbies are important to them, right? Do they have similar hobbies, similar things that they like to do? What about travel? Okay, so here's a couple, and they've just gotten to know each other, and one says, look, I'm thinking this summer we should go someplace exotic. What do you think about that? The person said, yeah, I'm thinking about, let's drive down to Olympia, and drive around there. Wouldn't that be great? And the person's going, no, I'm thinking about Paris. Paris, that means we have to fly. I don't like to fly. And the other person goes, I love to fly. What do you mean, right? We got a problem there, right? Where are they going to go in terms of travel, and what's important? How important is food to them? For one person, food is like everything. They talk about food all the time. They watch the Food Channel. For other persons, like food, why do I care about food? Why is that a big deal? So, and things like gaming and the internet, and what are the things that you like to do? How do you like to, spend time? What about music? Your music stinks. No. What do you mean my music stinks? I can't even listen to your music, right? Then you got two people who hate each other's music. How are they going to deal with that, right? So, interests. What things are of interest to you? What about sex? How important is sex of an interest to you? So here's a couple. They're getting to know each other and managing things, and so they decide, let's have a little discussion about sex. The person goes, so what do you think? The person says, for me, 3 times. That's how often I want to do it. And the person goes, yeah, 3 times a week sounds pretty good to me. The person goes, 3 times a week? I'm talking 3 times a day. What are you talking about? So what do we got? In 1 week, one wants it 3 times, the other wants it 21 times. We got a problem in similarity there, right? So interests. What are important things to you? Okay. Next is values. What do you consider important in your life? How important is education? You got a partner who says, why are you going to college? What a waste. You sit there, you listen to someone talk on and on, you take a bunch of exams and quizzes and write papers and all that, so what? What's that's going to get you? Go out and get a good job. Don't worry about, education. How important is family? Couple is out somewhere, he gets a text from his sister. I gotta go. What do you mean you gotta go? I'm going to the movie. I know my sister's in trouble. I need to help her out. We'll find someone else to help her out. This is my sister. So, right? So how important is family? How important is career? Something we talked about already, right? What level do you put career on? How much do you sacrifice, as we've talked about role conflict before? How much do you sacrifice your family for situations that, we wouldn't normally have done? So values. How important is volunteer work? How important is, giving to others? How important is, just sitting home at night and having a quiet evening as opposed to going out and doing things? What do you value? What is important to you? And then A is attitudes, right? What are your attitudes toward life? That is, where are you in things like capital punishment? What do you think about abortion? What do you think about birth control? What do you think about gun control? What do you think about the role of male and female? Who's supposed to cook, right? Who's supposed to clean? There's some men who say, I don't do the kitchen, right? So what are your attitudes about life? So what you see here is this BIVA, beliefs, interests, values, and attitudes. are areas in which it's very important that you be similar. The more similar you are, the more likely you're going to be able to get along and stay along and deal with some of the tough issues that occur in your life. Okay, so there they are. Proximity, rewardingness, and similarity. And what's the most important of the three? Similarity. Now, let's move next into another concept you see there, which is called complementarity. Now, this one's a little different than our factors that contribute to interpersonal attraction. In the complementarity, it says the following. It says, in some areas, it's important to be different from that person. And you go, wait a minute, Bauer. You just worked very hard on trying to convince me how important similarity was. And now you're telling me that in some areas it's important to be different? Yes, in some areas it is. So, I want you to write this question to yourself. And the question goes like this. Could I live with someone who is just like me? Whoa. For some of you, it's like, oh my goodness. Well, that's the answer. That's the question. Answer the question. Could you live with someone who's exactly like you? And if the answer comes up no, then when you go home tonight and you walk in the door, what you should probably say is, I'd like to thank everyone who lives with me. Because guess what? They live with someone who's exactly like you. So the question becomes, are there in fact some areas in our life that it may be helpful to be different from another person? Here's an example. The kitchen, right? Let's say we have similarity, that both people love to cook, and both of them hate to clean up, right? Now we got a problem, because they're fighting all the time in the kitchen, like, no, let me cook tonight, it's my turn. No, well, you cooked last night. I know, but I didn't have a chance to cook my, and now what do you got? You got some fight going on, because these people are too similar in certain areas. And so what might be helpful is some complementarity going on, right? That is, wouldn't it be good if one person loves to cook and the other one doesn't mind cleaning up, right? Or one person doesn't mind clearing the table and the other person doesn't mind putting away the dishes, right? Or loading the dishwasher or unloading the dishwasher. You see what's going on? That in some cases maybe similarity isn't very good. So let's go through I think a really important example of complementarity. Remember, complementarity says that in some areas it's important to be different. So let's take a look at this word. This word is called stubbornness. I want you to think about that word for a moment. Stubbornness. And let's think about it on a scale from 1 over here to 9 over here. And 1 is someone who's extremely low in stubbornness. 5 who's someone kind of mid-level stubbornness. And 9 is someone who's, yes, extremely stubborn. Now, what do we mean by stubborn? Stubborn means someone who refuses to change their mind about something. Someone who, once they make their decision, they're not going to budge at all. Okay? You think about the big 5 personality characteristics, and one of them is agreeableness, right? So someone who would score high on stubbornness probably would score low on agreeableness. And so think of someone way over here as a 1 on stubbornness. They're so agreeable that they agree to everything. It's like they're wishy-washy. How many of you know someone like that who's like, they can't make their decision on anything, right? So that's someone who's scored very low in stubbornness. Someone who's a 5, yeah, sometimes they give in, and other times it's like, no, I'm not going to, right? And then someone who's a 9, way over here, is someone who's like, no, I'm not changing my mind. No way. I'm not budging that at all. Okay? So what do we got here? Let's say we have two people who are 3s. They score a 3 on the stubbornness scale. Now, is that a problem? That may not be much of a problem, right? Is that, okay, sometimes I'll give in, sometimes I'll give in. But where do we have a problem? As we got someone over here who's like an 8, and their partner is also an 8. Now, here they are in the middle of a disagreement. And what's going on? This one's like, I'm not moving. No, I'm not changing at all. Are you kidding? The other one's like, no, me neither. You may think you're going to change, but I'm not changing either. Right? So what do we got? We got two areas in which people are very similar, but in this case, it's probably not a good thing. So here's a question for you. Let's say you met my wife, and you said to her, look, what does your husband score on that stubbornness scale? So let me ask you, how many of you would say that she would say, well, he's like a 1, 2, or 3? No, I don't see any hands going up here. All right. How many of you would say that she would say I score 4, 5, or 6? Okay. A few hands going up. 7, 8, or 9? Yeah. So, what's the next question? Where does she score, right? So she would say I'd score probably a 7.5 or so. Where does she score? Fortunately down here like on a 3. Now, am I lucky? Yes. Am I lucky I did not marry someone who was as stubborn as I was? Yes. Am I proud of being stubborn? No. Do I think it's inheritable? Yes. Why? Because when I'm at a party, all of a sudden I'll hear one of my spouses of my siblings go, I can't believe she is so stubborn. And one of my other spouses of my other siblings will turn to say, well, you should be married to this one. My wife will say, yeah, you should be married to him. And what I find is all 5 of us kids score high in stubbornness. So even though it hasn't been found, I suspect there's a stubbornness gene, but who knows, someday maybe they'll find it. But yes, I'm very fortunate that I did not marry someone who's as stubborn as I was. Now, over the years, she has said that I have gradually moved down in my stubbornness. That maybe I used to be an 8, and maybe now I'm a 7 or 7.5. But look, what I'm going to tell you next, if you ever meet her, don't tell her I said this. She's moved up a little bit in her stubbornness. Yeah, she's gone like from a 3 to 3.5. Once in a while, she's even at a 4. But don't tell her I said this, okay? So there it is. Complementarity. That is, yes, similarity is important, but in some areas, it's important to be different. So let's finish up this last part of interpersonal attraction by talking about something I call the trick of interpersonal attraction. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that in your lifetime, you've met a lot of people. And I want you to think about someone that is a friend of yours right now, but when you first met that person, you didn't like that person. Or maybe they just turned you off, or maybe they were just neutral. You didn't care about them one way or the other. But what I want you to think about is when you first met that person, you probably went, oh, geez. And then later on, you got to know them, and they became your friend. Right? You're thinking of someone right now, aren't you? Okay? So what's the point here? The point is, as we go through the course of our life, we are going to meet thousands and thousands of people. And what will happen is that proximity will occur at first. That is, you'll get thrown together with this person, right? But then what will happen is the factor of rewardiness will kick in. That is, the way they look, the way they talk, the way they act will influence whether we want to get to know them any better. Now, that friend of yours that you got to know better, probably you got to know them better because you got thrown together with them. You were on the same team, you worked at the same place, you had the same friends, whatever it was, you got to know that person and you worked through that initial feeling of, oh, I don't like that person, right? But the point I want you to get is, the trick is that when we first meet someone, we let rewardiness influence us. We let how they look, how they talk, how they act and all that influence whether we really even want to get to know them at all, whether we want to find out anything about their biva, about their beliefs, their interests, their values, and their attitudes, right? And so I want to introduce you to a guy named Leo Buscaglia. Leo Buscaglia. Leo Buscaglia, Buscaglia, professor at the University of Southern California. And back in the 1970s, he was teaching education classes, teaching people how to be teachers. He decided one quarter that he was going to offer a course called Love. Yeah, he's going to offer a course called Love 1A. So he reserved a room for about 50 people, and more than 100 people showed up. It's like, wow, something's going on here. People wanted to know about love. And he asked them a number of questions. Why am I afraid to love? Who am I? How can I be more of a loving person? You know, these great questions that people then sat and answered. And of course, they fell in love with his class. Pretty soon he was asked to give a talk down the street and then in another city, and pretty soon he was flying all over the United States and then the world for giving lectures on love. And after he'd get off the stage, he would line up, people would line up and they'd give him hugs. And he had he thought he had the world's record on the most hugs. He was an interesting guy. He ended up writing 6-7 books. This is a guy who said, I'd like to when I get on an elevator, you know, we have all these rules to get on the elevator, right? You get on the elevator, you turn around, you look at the numbers, you don't look at anybody, right? You don't talk to anybody. But he said, what I want to do when I get out of an elevator is I don't turn around. I said, hello everybody, my name's Leo. And wouldn't that be great if this elevator got stuck and we'd all get to know each other? And on the next floor, everyone would get off because there's a maniac on the elevator. So that's who Leo Buscaglia was. But he talked about this thing called, when we first meet someone, how we fall into this trap of, you know, how they look and how they act before we give them a chance to let us know who they really are. So he tells this story. It's called a Sufi Story, S-U-F-I. And the Sufi story goes like this. He says this guy's walking down the street one day and he sees his friend down the ground padding around. He said, what are you doing? He says, oh man, I can't find my key. I'm patting around on the ground. He goes, here, let me help you out. So he's down there patting down on the ground with this guy for a few minutes, and he says, this guy, but where were you when you lost your key? He said, the guy says, you know, actually I thought I lost it about a block down the street. The guy, well, what are you looking for your key here then? He said, well, there's more light here. It's easier to find it that way. You go, what is this about? And the whole point is, if you want to find the key to someone, you need to go inside here where it's dark. It's easy to look where there's more light. So that is your job as you continue through life, to not fall into the trick of interpersonal attraction. That is, to understand that when you meet people, don't fall into the trap of how they look, how they act, how they speak. Instead, give them that chance to see if you can get to know them a little bit and go inside where it's dark. You'll be happy that you did.